There's a ton of awesome changes that the new He-Man movie has made to the lore. We've learned about why the characters are named what they are and why Skeletor is such a piece of crap, Evil-Lyn's real intentions, and so much more. And on top of that, the movie was a joyride, filled with numerous characters, both big and small, good and evil. And it looks like they really put the $200 or so million to good use, which is how we have at least 25 major characters just from Eternia. And in this video, I'm going to explore the backstories of each of these wielders of sword and sorcery. So watch further, only if you can bring some of the juiciest secrets about the evil warriors and heroic warriors from Masters of the Universe. Now, let's begin.
I have the power!
He-Man! The new Masters of the Universe movie changed quite a few things as far as He-Man and his related lore is concerned, and I have to agree it all worked out for the best. I mean, we know that in the original cartoon, he was simply this shitty playboy who would sneak out of his palace to meet girls, or at least that's what his parents would think, and to them, he was simply Prince Adam, a rather good-for-nothing prince, who King Randor wanted to become a man, a more responsible man. In fact, his secret was hidden even from Teela, He-Man's lieutenant and Adam's love interest. However, all of that changed in the movie, because it tried and succeeded in giving many logical reasonings behind many of the over-the-top concepts. For instance, the movie explains just how Adam's superhero alter ego got the name He-Man. So we know that He-Man grew up on Eternia, although his twin Adora, aka She-Ra, had been taken by Skeletor and delivered to Hordak. Something similar happened to Adam in the 2026 movie. When Skeletor suddenly attacks Eternos, the capital city of Eternia, Adam is forced to flee to Earth, the homeworld of his mother, Queen Marlena. Adam came with a sword of power and was told by the sorceress to keep it close as it was his only way back home. But Adam was just a child and he lost the sword on his journey to Earth through a portal. He would then spend 15 years before finally being reunited with the sword. But the thing is, during this time he never stopped remembering his home planet and the people from the court of King Randor. The warriors, the soldiers, and everyone else. He would draw sketches of them in order to keep their memory alive, but he would forget the real names of many of his heroes, so he gave them made-up names. And you have to remember that these names came from the mind of a 10-year-old kid. So the man with the giant fist became Fisto. The man who would headbutt his foes became Ram Man. At the end of the movie, Teela asks him if he had given himself a name as well. Adam reluctantly and embarrassingly admits that he took to calling himself He-Man, a name that reeked of masculinity. But the thing is, Adam in the new movie is very much in touch with his feminine side. He simply isn't a masculine figure like Dutch from Predators or maybe Judge Dredd. Adam retains his personality even when he becomes He-Man. And although this He-Man is very different from the OG version, I like this guy better, and all thanks to Nicholas Galitzine, whose charm and comedic timing are just effortless. And so his portrayal of He-Man as a young man who's just been given a responsibility he wasn't quite ready for, but is doing his best to be the hero he was always meant to be. Also, the movie reveals that the Sword of Power is not the vessel that holds the power of Grayskull. It's Adam himself. So she chose Adam to be that vessel, which is pretty cool. King Randor. One of the most emotional changes in the new Masters of the Universe movie was King Randor's arc. I mean, this was not only about a prince who came back home after years away and picked up a sword. This was about a son who had spent 15 years on Earth, far from his kingdom, far from his people, and far from the father who'd been kept hostage by Skeletor. So when Adam finally learned that Skeletor had kept King Randor captive, he did what any self-respecting hero and son would do and went straight for him. The problem was that Skeletor was not alone, and Adam was badly outnumbered. He fought with courage, no doubt about that, but Evil-Lyn kind of froze him using her magic, and Adam, in an attempt to break free, used his Sword of Power, which released a blast of energy that shattered the walls and roof of Snake Mountain. And unfortunately, King Randor got buried under the debris and the rubble, thereby losing his life. So in essence, it was actually He-Man who killed his dear father, albeit unintentionally and accidentally. Now, Randor was not exactly in fighting shape during this unfortunate event. The man had already spent years as Skeletor's prisoner, so he was frail and weakened before the rubble even fell. Adam tried to free him, and the two only got a few final words together before Randor died. And yeah, that hurt, because the movie made the reunion happen only long enough for Adam to lose him again. What I liked here was how the movie used Randor's older lore but gave it a sharper emotional angle. In the pre-crisis DC stories by Paul Kupperberg, Randor and Marlena were shown as an older royal couple, and Randor was disappointed in Adam because he had no real interest in royal duty. Oh, and these are the first time that Randor and Marlena have ever appeared in any media. So anyway, these stories were the first to talk about Queen Marlena's Earth heritage. The 1983 cartoon worked on a similar idea, with Randor as the noble king of Eternia, father to Adam and later Adora, while he stayed unaware that Adam and He-Man were the same person. Here too, Randor often saw Adam as lazy or irresponsible, but he still loved his son and knew he had a good heart. Queen Marlena Glenn. Queen Marlena's backstory is actually something that makes Masters of the Universe feel slightly less fantastic. I mean, Eternia already had swords, sorcery, monsters, and Skeletor being Skeletor, but then it was revealed that the queen of this alien world was actually from Earth. Now this was cool because it meant Adam and Adora were not only royal twins from Eternia, but they were also half Earthlings. Marlena was born Marlena Glenn on Earth, where she became a skilled pilot while still in her teens. Later in college, she discovered astronautics and excelled here too, so NASA accepted her services. During her final space mission, her ship went off course and she ended up stranded in Eternia. After this, Randor took her in, and over time, the two fell in love. Marlena chose to stay with him and became his wife, as well as Queen Consort of Eternia. Now, the crazy thing is that Eternia having a king and queen is a concept that actually predates Prince Adam becoming He-Man, and From Eternia with Death and Masters of the Universe #1 gave her the name Marlena and expanded her origin. In the early mini-comics, the royals were mostly an older couple who always looked terrified whenever Skeletor threatened the kingdom. Then, in Paul Kupperberg's DC stories, Randor became the disappointed father who didn't understand Adam's antics, while the queen usually defended her son. She and Randor later had twins, Adam and Adora, who grew into He-Man and She-Ra. That truth stayed a secret, however, even from Randor, though Marlena seemed to suspect Adam's double life. In the new movie, Marlena is fully aware of her son being He-Man, and she's the one who goes to the Sorceress and suggests that Adam be sent to her homeworld, which is Earth. And although Randor dies in the movie, he's survived by Adam and Marlena.
He's coming!
Cringer or Battle Cat. Cringer as a concept could have turned really silly and disastrous, but I guess the relationship that he shares with Adam made him not only acceptable, but one of the coolest things about Adam's He-Man persona. I mean, this was his faithful cat, his scared little partner. And in the 2026 movie, we first see him as a cub when Adam was still a boy, thus elevating Cringer from the status of being just a mount to a character with their own personality. In the latest installment of the franchise, Adam reunited with Cringer after 15 years, and by then, the tiny cub had grown into a huge beast, large enough for both Adam and Teela to ride into battle. And yeah, much like Adam had He-Man, Cringer had Battle Cat, his armored alter ego. But the thing is, the movie didn't follow the old rule where Adam's transformation leads to Cringer's transformation. And Cringer, in his Cringer form, did gather the strength to go into battle, which is another big change. We briefly saw him in his Battle Cat form before the credits though, complete with the armor and all, and that was enough to assure fans that the movie had not forgotten one of the franchise's most iconic images. In fact, people had been worried because Cringer never spoke in the trailers, but the film did include both baby Cringer and adult Cringer, voiced by Tom Wilton and Fletcher Glenn, respectively. Suffice to say, we're going to see Cringer in the next movie, and that too in his Battle Cat persona.
Teela?
Go out there and shoot some bad guys.
Okay.
Sky Sled in the back.
I'm on it.
Teela. I loved Teela's treatment in the 2026 Masters of the Universe movie because they raised her from the usual hero's love interest status and gave her a very important role. So much so that she took over Man-at-Arms' responsibilities when he was wasting himself away with alcohol. Played by Camila Mendez, she was the captain of the Royal Guard, the adoptive daughter of Man-at-Arms, played by Idris Elba, and also Prince Adam's lieutenant as well as his romantic interest. So yeah, she had a lot on her plate, and thankfully the film didn't treat her like someone whose only job was to react to He-Man. In Travis Knight's version, Teela was the one who found Adam and brought him back to Eternia. The kingdom needed him to reclaim his destiny and help defend the realm from Skeletor. But apart from being this messenger with a sword, she was also a leader, someone brave and ready for battle, but also someone who believed in Adam and the people of Eternia. I mean, she even fights Evil-Lyn despite the fact that Lyn had all those magical abilities and stuff. Oh, and I was truly surprised when Teela, in a moment of panic, actually tells He-Man that she saw him as a brother. I'm sure that's going to change later on. Anyway, her design also respected the old cartoons and didn't objectify her with skimpy clothes. The white and gold accents, dark red boots, white pants, gold armor, brown straps, and thigh holsters for her blaster pistol, and sword all gave her a practical warrior look. Now, in the later installments of the franchise, Teela has become the new sorceress, and she's revealed to be the daughter of the former sorceress. But when she first appeared in the mini-comics from the early 80s, Teela's story was very different. In those early mini-comics, Skeletor and Beastman captured her and took her to Castle Grayskull, so Skeletor could make her his bride, until He-Man and Man-at-Arms saved her. Later, DC mini-comics revealed that she was a clone of the goddess, created for evil purposes actually, but rescued by Man-at-Arms and raised as his daughter.
A big army only means one thing. More targets.
Duncan or Man-at-Arms? Eternia has always had magic, monsters, swords, and Skeletor causing all sorts of problems. But Duncan was someone who brought a level of groundedness to this sword and sorcery franchise. And he did it through his ability to build weapons, train heroes, etc. But more importantly, he knew how to tell everyone to stop acting silly, and more often than not, people listened to him. In the 2026 movie, Idris Elba played Duncan as King Randor's trusted general, Teela's adoptive father, and the tough mentor figure who helped guide Adam once he returned to Eternia. But yeah, this version was not the only strong warrior with gadgets, and the movie gave him a very strong emotional arc. So after Eternia suffered the terrible defeat at the hands of Skeletor and his forces, Duncan blamed himself for failing to save the king and the kingdom, and that guilt broke him down for a while. Furthermore, he even lost to Trapjaw, at least initially. And all of these failures, well, he just couldn't bear the weight, and since he wasn't grand on processing his feelings, he struggled with grief and turned to drinking, ultimately becoming a faded version of the fighter he used to be. So much so that even Teela stops respecting her dad, although she still loves him. But Duncan fights back. He stands tall after falling down, and that's a cool thing that Travis Knight did with Duncan. Like, he wasn't portrayed as this perfect old soldier, but a man who had flaws, but also had the metal to rectify such flaws. Furthermore, the mid-credits scene also used him well, because his talk with Queen Marlena strongly hinted at Adora or She-Ra, and both Duncan and the Queen admitted that they had not given up hope that Adam's sister might return. As for his first appearance, in the early mini-comics, Man-at-Arms had no royal family connection yet, and his people were called Masters of All Weapons. Later stories made him Teela's father after, as I mentioned earlier, he saved the goddess from Skeletor's magical clone, and raised that powerless child as his own daughter. Skeletor. I think I'm glad that Jared Leto didn't show his face in the movie as Skeletor, else it would have ran the risk of becoming yet another Joker or Morbius. But yeah, this Skeletor was genuinely the funniest Skeletor ever, and I don't mean laughable, I mean funny. But then again, he still has a dark side to him, and he doesn't refrain from killing people or turning them into pork sausage when it suits him. Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. But the thing is, Adam guessed that Skeletor may have never received the love he wanted as a child, and that trauma turned him into the evil Dark Lord that he is. But Skeletor himself rejected that idea and insisted that he was the villain because he enjoyed selfish power. And to be honest, the whole misunderstood poor guy image doesn't really suit the ugly, skull-faced villain. In the movie, Skeletor's attack on Eternos forced the young sorceress to send Adam to Earth with the Sword of Power. But at the end, He-Man destroyed Skeletor's Havoc Staff, and as soon as the thing got crushed, Skeletor found himself reduced to a skull. However, the post-credits scene then showed Evil-Lyn picking up Skeletor's skull in Castle Grayskull, while his laugh confirmed that he is bound to return. If the sequel focuses on the She-Ra lore, Hordak could become the next major villain, while Evil-Lyn may rebuild Skeletor in the background, and Skeletor might actually join hands with Hordak, only to betray him or something like that. Anyway, in the early mini-comics, Skeletor actually belonged to a whole other dimension and wanted his people to invade Eternia, but the later stories wanted some sort of family drama and more personal stakes, so they represented Skeletor as Keldor, King Randor's older brother, who fell from grace and became the demon lord that we know him as.
Evil-Lyn. Evil-Lyn.
Evil-Lyn. Personally, I enjoyed Evil-Lyn more than any other character in the movie, and it seemed like they really had fun with her. Played by Alison Brie, she managed to get some of the biggest laughs from the people in my theater. In fact, every scene that she appeared in was a blast. Miss Brie is an amazing actress, although slightly underrated, and I'm glad she got the limelight she deserved. But anyway, much like the comics and the cartoons, Evil-Lyn has never really been an ardent or blind follower of Skeletor's. She serves him to actually serve her own purpose, and is not averse to severing her ties with him if it suits her. In fact, in the movie, you can see the disdain in her eyes when he hurts her for petty things or things where she's not even at fault. Anyway, she first appeared as a toy and then went on to become a constant companion of Skeletor, and was loyal just enough to serve as his key general, but she clearly wanted to take his place one day. In fact, the 1983 toy line had her as Teela's evil counterpart. Additionally, in the cartoons, Evil-Lyn was the only woman among the evil warriors and easily smarter than most of Skeletor's minions. And maybe she was smarter than Skeletor himself. She admitted she wasn't as powerful as him, but she still hoped to steal his power and rule Eternia herself.
And you, Fisto!
Malcolm or Fisto? As Adam put it in the movie, Fisto basically fists people. The man had a giant fist, and of course that's the one thing you see when you look at the guy, which is what happened with Adam too. When he was away from his folks and stuck on Earth, trying to find a way back home, he named Malcolm after his giant fist and called him Fisto. He first appeared in the 1984 toy line as the heroic master of hand-to-hand combat. The 2026 movie gave Fisto a small but fun upgrade. He appeared as one of the heroic warriors, and during the Royal Palace battle, he used that famous fist to smash through Skeletites before later taking part in the larger battle for Eternia after Adam returned home. The biggest change in Fisto from the new movie and the Fisto from the comics or cartoons was the fist itself. Instead of only being an oversized metal glove kind of thing, it had rocket-powered thrusters underneath, which made every punch heavier and way more ridiculous, but also ridiculously cool. I mean, I really did enjoy the banter between He-Man and Fisto and the camaraderie between Fisto and Ram-Man. And speaking of, why don't we talk about
And Ram-Man. You ram. And you're a man.
Ram-Man. Ram-Man was a huge man with spring-style legs and a flat metal helmet, who liked giving people head. And Mattel basically sold him as a human battering ram. Needless to say, his main trick, and power for that matter, is that he used his super hard helmet to smash through enemies and break through obstacles. But yeah, the lore never really explained how he could pull off the feats that he did. I mean, the kind of things that he did were simply impossible for even the most powerful of humans to pull off. In the cartoons and comics version of Ram-Man, it was believed that he either had some sort of mystical boost like He-Man, or maybe his body had some enhanced tech elements like Trapjaw. Either way, the mystery was alright to kids who watched him, and to us it was enough to know that he hit things with his head, and that was the whole point. We saw his first major story in the Mattel minicomic titled He-Man Meets Ram-Man, where he lived alone in a barren stretch of land and attacked anyone who crossed into it. He seemed to believe every visitor wanted a fight, and the story implied that he pulled away from others after years of mistreatment by those around him. He-Man tried to come in peace, but Ram-Man didn't trust him and attacked anyway, which forced He-Man to fight back and beat him. The 2026 movie kept him as a heroic warrior, but made him more technologically advanced. It also seemed like there was some kind of thrusters in his helmet, and he could even fly short distances, albeit headfirst.
Mekaneck.
Mekaneck was another Masters of the Universe character whose name pretty much explained just who or what the guy was and what his powers could be about. Mattel originally sold him as the heroic human Periscope because of his bionic neck, which had the ability to extend to huge heights, and this helped him see across long distances through his special visors. So yeah, Mekaneck helped the Masters of the Universe in the capacity of the team's lookout and spy, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't fight when needed. He also appeared in the 1984 toy line as an action figure, where you twist the waist and the neck extended, and his original working name was Spyman. And in fact, he was called Spyman itself in the Filmation series Bible before Mekaneck became the final version of his name. In the 1983 cartoon, he appeared in only 3 episodes, namely Disappearing Dragons, Here, There, Skeletors Everywhere, and A Search for a Son, mostly because the show was already near its end when he made his way into it. Search for a Son gave him his backstory as well, and it was revealed that Man-at-Arms had given him the bionic neck after a severe windstorm had badly injured him. During that same storm, Mekaneck lost his son Philip, and he later served King Randor and the Royal Guard while hoping to find him one day. However, Count Marzo had actually kept Philip captive and tried to trade him for the throne of Eternia. The 2026 movie kept Mekaneck as a heroic warrior and turned his periscope neck into a weapon, and he could use it like a chained mace against enemies. Although Mekaneck doesn't have a lot of dialogue in the movie, given his awesome neck, he doesn't need words to leave an impact.
Goatman, Spikor,
Trapjaw. Trapjaw was one of Skeletor's ugliest yet strongest weapons in the 2026 Masters of the Universe movie. And here, he was a lot more practical than his toy or cartoon versions. Sam C. Wilson played him as a half-human, half-robot enforcer, and he had like several of those metal enhancements and upgrades. In fact, he could switch between multiple weapons depending on the situation, and that's just how he managed to defeat Duncan the first time they clashed. He had that famous reinforced jaw, a robotic arm socket, and deadly attachments like hooks, blades, and laser cannons. So yeah, Wizard of Weapons was not really a misnomer for Trapjaw. Before he became Trapjaw, he'd been a blue-skinned criminal and cybernetic mercenary. But after severe injuries left his original jaw shattered and his arm broken, Skeletor's forces rebuilt him into what we see today, the much worse version of himself. Needless to say, they didn't patch him up out of kindness and turned him into a frontline monster for Snake Mountain. And he also worked as one of the main mechanics and engineers, which makes sense because a guy with interchangeable weapon arms would probably know his way around machinery. His 2026 look also took serious work behind the scenes, and Sam C. Wilson went through heavy physical prep, while Barry Gower, the award-winning prosthetic designer from Game of Thrones, helped create the character through 6-hour prosthetic applications. Trapjaw fought He-Man and the heroic warriors throughout the film, but Duncan finally ended him during the aerial ship battle by forcing an explosive device into his metal mouth. The fireball destroyed the ship and Trapjaw with it before the ship crashed into the water. Sorceress. The Sorceress of Castle Grayskull is definitely one of the most important mystical people in the Masters of the Universe, and the 2026 movie version of the Sorceress did show her in a similar light. Played by Marlena, an actress that I personally love, the Sorceress served as the guardian of Castle Grayskull, and the source connected to He-Man's power. But the thing is, she was not someone who could simply solve every problem with magic, and it's like she would guide the good guys to achieve their goals without actually doing anything directly, and that's because she has to follow certain rules. But these rules actually made her character stronger instead of holding her back. When Skeletor attacked Eternia and pushed the kingdom to its grimmest form, the Sorceress stayed inside Castle Grayskull where her magic was at its highest. Alongside Queen Marlena, she sent young Prince Adam to Earth with the Sword of Power, because that was the only way to keep it away from Skeletor and his forces. She also worked as a vital link between Eternia and Earth, since she kept Adam connected to his true home even after he'd spent years away from it. In classic mythology, Teela, the mother of Teela, became the current sorceress after Kuduk Ungol. The pool of power gave her immense magical strength inside Grayskull, but outside the castle her abilities were much more limited. She could still speak telepathically with her trusted allies and change into Zor the Falcon when she had to travel outside the castle. Beastman. Beastman is one of the most Masters of the Universe kind of villains. I mean, everything was self-explanatory about this guy, and he needed no complicated explanation. His look, his name, that's all Beastman really is. This was Skeletor's beastly muscle. The guy you sent when your finer plans didn't work out, or when Skeletor simply wanted someone smashed into paste. In the 2026 movie, however, he feels much bigger and more dangerous than his other versions. Unfortunately, Beastman was often reduced to a loud henchman, thereby taking away his violent and beastly glory. In the movie, Beastman served as one of Skeletor's main battlefield enforcers and one of his strongest evil warriors. He also played a major role in the Earth part of Adam's story, because when Adam finally found the Sword of Power, the sword sent a signal, and both Skeletor and the Masters picked up said signal. While the Masters dispatched Teela, Skeletor dispatched Beastman to find Adam and get the sword from him. But yeah, Teela and Earth's traffic beat the crap out of Beastman, after which he returned to Snake Mountain, only to be tortured by Skeletor. Visually, the movie Beastman has a very high action figure energy, and Beastman benefited from that. He kept the reddish face and tan fur from his classic look, but the design went larger with a giant creature build, heavy strength, and came with a spiky harness. As far as his origins concerned, Beastman was among the first 7 Masters of the Universe characters created, and one of the first 4 released with He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Skeletor. In the early mini-comics, he was Skeletor's closest loyal follower and ferocious man-beast who could call Eternia's wild creatures into battle. Tri-Klops. Masters of the Universe often went neck-deep into the waters of weird tech that bordered on magic, and Tri-Klops is a prime example of that trope. The guy has 3 eyes, a rotating visor, and a hell of a lot of battlefield utility, which made him one of Skeletor's top henchmen. In the 2026 movie, Tri-Klops was reworked as Skeletor's high-tech right-hand man. With a cybernetic look and a futuristic red optical lens, that made him look and feel more advanced than his older versions. In the film, his main job was to recover the Sword of Power, or at least locate it, and keep an eye on the rebels. After Adam returned to Eternia, Tri-Klops used his multi-mode visor to hunt him down. His visor had always been the real trick anyway, and across the franchise, its 3 eyes usually gave him Distavision or Farsight, Night Vision for dark environments, and Gamma Vision to see through or around objects, and for the rotten cherry on a stale cake, each of his eyes has its own optic blast. In the early mini-comics, Skeletor summoned him because he needed a warrior with strength close to He-Man's. Tri-Klops was a skilled hunter and swordsman, and he even knocked Battle Cat unconscious with one punch before he nearly got the better of He-Man. In the Filmation cartoon, he stayed more stoic than most of Skeletor's crew, worked with Evil-Lyn at times, yet remained wary of betrayal and later helped Skeletor and Hordak kidnap Adora. However, in a few of the comics, he serves simply as a mercenary who would side for whichever side suits his interests best, and there have been instances where Tri-Klops has outright betrayed Skeletor. For instance, the currently ongoing He-Man series. Karg. Karg had a strange place in Masters of the Universe history because he didn't originate from the old toy line or the cartoon or even the comics. In fact, he was created solely for the 1987 Dolph Lundgren movie as a replacement for Trapjaw, with Robert Towers playing him as one of Skeletor's minions and the head of the mercenaries who commanded Skeletor's militia. But yeah, after a very long absence, Karg finally made his way back in the 2026 Amazon MGM movie, now as one of Skeletor's evil warriors alongside Trapjaw himself. Naturally, apart from Dolph Lundgren's appearance, Karg connects the 2 live-action movies. Spikor. Now, most of the Masters of the Universe villains look intimidating, and Spikor is one of the more scary-looking evil warriors. But the thing is that his cartoon reputation does not quite do justice to how he looks. In his first minicomic titled Spikor Strikes, he was seen as a deadly fighter, whose spikes and trident made him a force to reckon with. Although the story didn't give him much personality beyond that, the Terror Claws' strike later added more to him, and this time he was shown as a blacksmith who lived inside a mountain cavern and made weapons for Skeletor. In fact, he had created the Terror Claws that came with the Terror Claws Skeletor figure. Then Filmation brought him into the cartoon soon after his toy hit the shelves, and that version went in a very different direction. Skeletor's henchmen were often foolish, but Spikor somehow became the most useless of the lot. He had a stiff, almost robotic voice, a childlike personality, and a strange habit of stressing every second syllable as if he had started a song only he could hear. Maybe that was deliberate because his design could have looked too scary for children. And this foolish personality got carried forward into the 2026 movie, where his spikes that are supposed to be his weapon actually become the source of a problem for him. He-Man twice pushed him hard against walls, and thanks to his spikes, he got stuck, unable to free himself. Next, Karg got stuck in Spikor's spikes, and that made for another hilarious fight sequence. All in all, Spikor is a terrifying looking dude who is just not potent enough. Goatman. Let me know if I'm wrong, but I think only die-hard Masters of the Universe fans would remember this deep-cut villain. But thankfully, the 2026 movie clearly saw more in him. Played by Hafthor Julius Bjornsson, the same man who played the Second Mountain in Game of Thrones, he became one of Skeletor's biggest muscle men. And yeah, when you cast a real-life strongman for a character like this, you do get more than you bargained for. In the wider lore, Goatman's not even his real name. His actual name was Clacky, and he came from the Goatmen, an intelligent humanoid species from the northern mountains of Eternia. The sad part is that his people were highly vulnerable to the hypnotic power of Beastman, and because of that, Clacky lost his freedom. He was captured, reduced to a servant, and forced to obey the rulers of the Vine Jungle. The name Goatman itself was a cruel slur kind of name that he received from his captor. What made his 2026 role even more interesting was how little he was initially given. Early drafts had him only in one scene, but once the production designer Guy Hendrix Diaz revealed the concept art, with that massive beast-like frame and fierce tribal makeup, Travis Knight and the team clearly changed their mind. Mossman. Just like several other of the Masters of the Universe characters, Mossman's name doesn't give you much trouble about understanding who he really is. The guy was literally a man made of moss, and that's what his power set is based on. He could blend into foliage and green spaces, control plant life, change into different kinds of plants, and live peacefully in an evergreen forest among animals and nature. His toy history is also interesting because he's basically a rehashed version of another character. The figure was a green repaint of Beastman covered in fuzzy moss material, with the fangs painted over and a pine scent added to the body. He also came with a mace that reused a weapon from the original Castle Grayskull set. Mossman actually hit the shelves back in 1985, but by then the Filmation cartoon was near its end, so he only got 2 proper episodes, namely Here, There, Skeletors Everywhere, and The Ancient Mirror of Avathar. In one, he worked as a spy who could turn into a plant and observe danger. In the other, he used vine-like arms and spoke with plants to rescue others. He also had a background cameo in He-Man and She-Ra the Christmas Special. Having said that, Mossman got much more room in the Golden Book's Skeletor's Flavor of Power and the River of Ruin, where he helped He-Man expose Skeletor's schemes. Unfortunately though, the 2026 film doesn't feature him for long. After Skeletor learns that He-Man has the Sword of Power in his possession, he comes to the rebel camp and asks for the whereabouts of the hero. But when no one answers his questions, he threatens to kill them one by one, and the first victim is Mossman, who Skeletor attacks with his Havoc staff and turns into a goo. But given Mossman's history in the comics and cartoons, I'm assuming that we might just be able to see him again in the next installment of the franchise. Roboto. Roboto's story started with the toy line in 1985, and his first story could be found in the Mattel mini-comic, The Battle of Roboto, where Man-at-Arms built him and gave him a cybernetically enhanced heart, and this allowed Roboto to feel human emotions and deal with his allies as a person rather than a machine. So yeah, he wasn't only metal parts and gears, and the robot guy had a heart, literally and otherwise. Being a robot, he didn't feel any pain and was definitely not a coward. In the comics, Roboto proved himself as a brave fighter, even to the point of facing Hordak in single combat, which is a pretty big deal. However, because the Filmation cartoon was near its end when his toy came out, he only got 1 episode. Lucky for him, Happy Birthday Roboto gave him a full story and a very different origin as well. In this version, he'd been a space explorer from Robotica who crashed on Eternia, and Man-at-Arms had repaired him after the wreck. The 2026 movie then changed things again by making Roboto female and turning her into a major side character. Once upon a time, Roboto used to be a heroic warrior, but after an incident that Roboto called an accident and Duncan saw as attempted murder, Duncan changed Roboto's programming from a war robot to a servant. But that changed when He-Man made friends with her and sought her help to escape. Her design drew heavily from the 2002 version, although the first version skipped the transparent chest and went with a larger frame, dark blue and gray plating, and a new head design. During the final act, Trapjaw attacked Duncan and Roboto aboard a flying vehicle, and gunfire blew Roboto apart, although her head survived. Later, Duncan repaired her with the classic transparent front plate and visible cogs, which was a nice little full circle touch, but Roboto felt that her new design was too revealing, and in robot terms, I guess she wasn't entirely wrong. Dolph Lundgren, who portrayed He-Man in the 1987 film, cameos as a macho man who encounters Adam at the gym. In the movie, Adam had not yet reached that He-Man level of confidence, and that was troubling him. I mean, since the beginning, his father King Randor's tough love had made Adam a scared little kid, and that thing followed him into his adult life. He was still timid, still unsure of himself, and still stuck with the voices from his childhood that made him doubt whether he could ever become powerful enough to stand on his own. And that's where Dolph Lundgren's scene comes in, basically to rescue Adam and help him gain his confidence. At the gym, Adam was called out by a tall, strong, blonde, older bodybuilder, and of course, that man was Dolph Lundgren. Needless to say, longtime fans knew exactly what that meant, because Lundgren had played He-Man in the 1987 live-action Masters of the Universe movie. The two shared a small exchange, and Lundgren's character gave Adam advice about standing up for himself before he left, after wishing Adam a good journey. Did Dolph's character know who Adam was? Was Dolph's character He-Man from another universe? One who had taken his retirement from the superhero's life and now lived peacefully on Earth? Well, these are valid but futile questions because there's no way that the franchise is heading for a multiverse. But either way, it was a beautiful callback. Adora, or She-Ra, played by Lauren Selou, also appears in the mid-credits. So Adam had returned from Earth, defeated Skeletor with the help of his friends and the power inside him, and Eternia finally moved back, or rather forward, toward peace and prosperity. But then, Queen Marlena pointed out that this corner of the galaxy was still not whole, but in reality, she was just opening the door to Adam's long-lost twin sister. On Eternia, a nearby planet, another fight had already begun. The post-credits scene introduces Princess Adora. Adora, aka She-Ra, had been created as He-Man's female counterpart after the huge success of the 1983 animated series. Unlike Adam, who came from the toy line first, She-Ra had been created for TV, by Larry DiTellio, J. Michael Straczynski, and Diane Keener. She debuted in The Secret of the Sword, which also launched She-Ra, Princess of Power in 1985. Her OG origin had Hordak kidnap her as a baby and take her to Eternia, where she later served the Horde until Adam arrived and revealed the truth. He gave her the Sword of Protection, the counterpart to his Sword of Power, and that allowed her to call on Grayskull and become She-Ra. The 2026 tease suggested Adora had already rejected her given name, so if a sequel happened, Adam may not be there to witness the creation of She-Ra, but to help her finish the war. Orko. Apart from She-Ra's cameo, the second biggest fan service was Orko's cameo. And thank God for it, because people had been wondering for months as to where Adam's little wizard friend was. He was absent from the trailers, absent from the merch, and yet for a second, or actually through the entire runtime of the movie, it looked like the 2026 version would repeat the 1987 mistake and leave him out again. But right before the credits ended, Orko finally made his way into the film. The scene has him in a market on Eternia, where he breaks the fourth wall asking, "What did we learn today, kids?" And if you remember, that was very much like his old school Filmation cartoon role. He looked close to the 1983 version too, with the hat hiding his face, those bright eyes, and the blue elfin ears peeking out. Christopher Ragland was listed as the voice, and although the cameo was brief, it confirmed that Orko existed in this universe. Orko was never a Mattel-made original, and Filmation created him for the cartoon because every 80s show needed a cute sidekick, and Lou Shamer both created and voiced him. He was a wizard from Trolla, King Randor's court magician, Adam's childhood companion, and one of the few who knew Adam was He-Man. Sadly, the 1987 film replaced him with Gwildor, played by Billy Barty, which fans later joked was a discount Orko. I mean, no hate to Gwildor, but Orko was Orko, and the two of them finally shared the screen in Netflix's Masters of the Universe Revolution. But the 2026 film skipped Gwildor. Maybe next time. For now, at least Orko got his moment. And yeah, with that, we've come to the end of this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And please, please, please ring that notification bell so that you get notifications when we post new videos. Those 3 small clicks from you help us in ways we can't even explain. It'll help us continue to bring more awesome videos like this. Stay safe and have a good one. And don't you forget to stay marvelous.